All right. Hey guys, we are live. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to another episode of Creative Success Stories. I am super excited to introduce our guest for today. She is an author, a serial entrepreneuress, and she's just doing wonderful things on Etsy. And that's why we invited her to speak here for you guys so that she can share her wisdom and knowledge with you. Because I know a lot of you have asked about selling on Etsy, making money on Etsy, and basically taking control of your own business and just experiencing personal freedom. That's that thing that we all seek, right? So I would love to go ahead and introduce Mandy here. Mandy, why don't you just say hello? Are you there? Just so we can see you and hear you. Awesome. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. So Mandy Lee, for those of you guys who don't know, Mandy Lee is a working artist. She's never idle. She juggles multiple business projects, and she always combines her creativity and e-commerce as a path to self-employment and personal freedom. An Etsy seller since 2009, her shop, The Quoted Cup, is the mainstay of her multiple creative sources of income. So step by step, she illustrates how to start, build, and maintain both physically and mentally a shop on Etsy. So she wrote a book called From Artistic to Entrepreneur, which I've ordered. I ordered this last week and it hasn't arrived yet, but I'm super excited to read it. And she wrote this book to inspire others to overcome their obstacles and take more control of their own lives through entrepreneurship. So Mandy, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story here?
Oh, well, let's see. Okay, so I've been doing, as you stated, I've had an Etsy shop since 2009. I've been an artist my entire existence. And I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. I love utilitarian art or craft. I love art that functions. So, and I'm by sort of by trade and have a BFA in ceramics. So I've always worked in pottery and in sculpture, but on the side have always things that sell, and have juggled that with many other jobs, everything from construction to bartending to I canvass door to door to for the environment, office management, archivist, you name it. I've sort of been down that road, but always had my fingers in my fine art, as well as entrepreneurial type of gig, from design to handmade ceramics, etc. And with the invention of the internet coming into our lives, it has just opened up the world for entrepreneurship. And that's the first line of the introduction of my book, is that there's nothing to be an entrepreneur because we have access to the world. And so the trick is, it's also a very big world, so it's a little daunting. So the book was about, here's an easy way to get in and get a sense of costs whatsoever.
Awesome. And how did you come across Etsy? Can you tell us about that time, and also what made you think that you can sell your stuff online? How did you come to that conclusion?
Question. It's funny, I hadn't thought about that, but where I did, I heard about Etsy from Joy Bear on The View, because her daughter, I remember, this was so long ago. This was like 10 years ago. And it was this random comment. Her daughter is a potter in Vermont or something like that, and said, oh, my daughter's on Etsy. And I thought, what's Etsy? And so then I just looked it up and curious about it for a while. And I finally, when I sort of, after I kept checking in on it, and once few pictures, and I just put stuff up there. And I started with some really, really fun, crafty things. The first things I sold were hand, that each one, they hung from a chain and hung outside. And I started off really slow, but there was no pressure whatsoever with Etsy. Like the startup fees are so minimal. You pay 20 cents for a listing, and a listing lasts for 4 months. And so I just kind of was always there in my background for a couple of years, where I just like, oh yeah, I have an Etsy shop, and sometimes a business card made, and I would send people there, you know, oh, you should check out my Etsy shop. But it just sort of meandered along for a while because I really didn't work it. And like anything in life, relationships of any kind, be it business or personal, if you don't water your garden, it's not going to grow.
Yeah.
You're paying attention to it. And as soon as I started paying attention to it, and there's a story about that, about how my husband and I created Shakespeare in our backyard. I live in Taos, New Mexico, so not known very much for Shakespeare, but I grew up on the East Coast, and we grew up around Shakespeare a lot. We ended up bringing it to a stage in our backyard. People loved it. I started making cups with Shakespeare at the shows during intermission. I would sell them, and people just loved them. And it was like the light bulb went off. I thought, oh my gosh, enough of these. So I'm going to put these on my Etsy shop. Began to flow.
Very cool. Yeah. So that's the quoted cup. That's the Shakespeare quotes on the mugs.
That's how it started. And yeah, exactly. And so, and throughout this whole time, and it was really exciting too, after having the shop for a couple years, and, you know, selling things here and there and here and there, to just keep adding to it. I mean, I also created a Go game, which is 3 games in one, with like, you know, a handmade canvas board that I had sewn here in New Mexico, and that was sort of going okay too. Like, people really enjoyed the products. I didn't really know how to get it out very well. And then when the quoted cup came along, like once the cups from Shakespeare started really selling, I mean, the more they sold, I would make, and the more I would photograph. Like every time I had, because I also do wholesale orders, which I didn't touch on in this book. Perhaps there'll be a version. So I have wholesale orders to local accounts. And every time I would have any kind of a custom cup or a new Shakespearean quote, I would photograph it and put it up on Etsy. Just put it up there. And the thing about Etsy too is when you sell something, you go up in the ranks of the algorithm. So when you open up to Etsy, I mean, there's like sort of the rolling pictures, you know, little images of people's shops are going by. And whenever you sell an item, your picture pop up right there. So what happens is you get this sort of snowball effect, that the more you're selling, the more your picture is popping up, and the more than people are seeing it, and the more than you're selling.
Right. So that's the exciting part.
It's when things started to snowball, and what I do is very, very exciting, really exciting, because it's just great. So when you work it, it really works for you and gives back.
Yeah, it's almost like the positive reinforcement, right? You're seeing the more that you're putting up, you're seeing more sales, and then that's just encouraging you even more. But I think the part where a lot of us creatives get stuck is way in the beginning, right? Is when we're not seeing those sales, but we still know that we have to water the garden, so to speak. So how is it simple to just start an Etsy store? Like, truthfully, what's the process like?
It was just go on Etsy and sort of see what's there, you know, to see how people are presenting their own shops. But then create, I have a resources page with free resources. Whether or not you have the book or not, you can just go to FromArtistic2Entrepreneur.com. And
the link to will be in the description, guys.
That will actually show you exactly. And I have worksheets that actually will show you exact setup and how to actually prepare yourself mentally first too. Like, why are you doing this? But the actual how to do it, I have a worksheet that says my shop, that's called my shop, and it lists, okay, have this. It's not hard. It's just you want to kind of have it in one place ready to go, so you can be like, okay, I'm going to sit down, and for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, I'm going to get my shop up there. You know, I'm going to create this up, and I'll just get started, because it's really easy to just get started. And I recommend beginning with at least 3 items, because 1 item just looks a little empty. And but then you can continually add to your shop. You can change your descriptions. You can change your photographs. You can add more. You can add more to your about page, which is the about you, which is, as I understand it, it's one of the most heavily watched pages on any website. People go to the about page. They want to know who they're buying stuff from. You know, they want to know who you are. They want to know who you are, right? You know, so you have some great information about your background and all of the different projects that you do.
Very cool. Yeah, it's always important to have that story, that profile part. I mean, even on our YouTube channel, right? We take the time to write in there, because people do check that out. You know, people want to know more about you. People connect with people, human beings, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, definitely, that's important. So what?
And your life changes, and so your life changes too. So you can always, because of the beauty of the internet, you can just constantly update that and keep people in the loop of what you're doing and what you're making, and you know, and share that.
Absolutely, yeah. So my next question was, actually, before I ask that question, guys, to those of you who are watching, we have Jewel, who is behind the scenes. She's taking any questions. You know, she's managing the chat. So if you do have questions for myself or for Mandy, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat box, because we are looking there and making sure that your questions get answered. All right. So to go into my next question, what types of things would you sell? Like, is it just what you make, like it's crafts, or can you give us an idea of what's being sold on Etsy?
Almost anything, but not everything. Basically, what you can't sell on Etsy is something you did not make or did not design and make. Because that's called reselling, unless you do it under the heading of foodstuffs, which they do have a very limited. And again, I'm not in the food business, but it's foodstuffs like royal icing and things like that. But again, you have to sort of look into your own hometown and what the laws are about selling food on the internet. So I don't know a whole lot about that section. The reselling part only exists in their vintage goods, and I believe items have to be more than 20 years old in order to do that. Anything else you make, whether it be, you know, t-shirts that you have made, or you know, ceramics, whether it be more of like fine art, or a commercial version of the art, you know, pot holders, pillowcases, you know, maybe you decorate doorknobs or glasses, you know, you bedazzle blue jeans or something like that. The field is really, really wide open, but it's really about crafts. It really has a focus on craft as opposed to necessarily fine art, though there is fine art out there. Yeah. So anything creative that's utilitarian is really the main focus of Etsy.
Okay. And is there enough traffic on Etsy to kind of move your store on its own, or do you also promote it? Do you do your own marketing?
It's funny. As we mentioned before, when things start to sell a lot, it's just selling itself, because my phone. Oh, this is a great. I mentioned this in the book too. One of the great on the Etsy app. This is one of the better designed features of Etsy is when you make a sale, your phone makes the sound of an old cash register, and it goes cha-ching.
Oh, lovely. I love that sound.
I know, right? Yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah. So I've done a few things where I've had sort of a viral response. I did a mug called the Taos mug, which was a quote about the town that I live in. And someone had me make it for them, and I photographed it and put it up there, and I put it on Facebook. I put it on Etsy, but then I actually use mostly Facebook for social media marketing. I'm learning to branch out, but so I do promote myself. I do actually get into the habit. I try to do like a weekly post of a cup of the week kind of thing, and keeps it fresh, keeps things happening. I'm learning more now about Twitter and Instagram and how to utilize those accounts. I'm going to give a shout out to you, Ari, because I just went through your course of social media marketing simplified, which was fantastic. So if
Awesome.
any of you are worried about or concerned or want to learn about social media marketing, check out our REITs course. I couldn't believe how much I didn't know. So
Thank
for
you.
illuminating that. And I'm looking forward to going back and implementing what you talk about for that reason, and being able to simplify it, make it easier, where if I post on Facebook, it automatically also posts on Twitter and it posts on Instagram and et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both, but when things are going well, Etsy is actually working for you because of those algorithms and because it's just more people are seeing you more often, and then the percentage rates goes up for people buying.
So how do you manage all of these little tasks that you got to do, right? So you need to spend time on creating whatever it is that you're creating, and then also taking photos of it, and then creating, I guess, the listing on Etsy, and then needing to maybe market it or not. So how do you manage all of these things?
I have a chapter called The Entrepreneurial Secret to Success. And the main focus of that chapter is discipline. There's discipline and then there's organization, and both of those things together. And that's a great question, because being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot easier to just go to a job and collect a paycheck. You know, you do what they tell you to do. You take home an already set, amount of money you've agreed upon, or maybe you work for tips.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship opens the door. You have the ability to make more money through entrepreneurship than you'll ever have working for someone else, if you think about it. Like, if you really, because the sky's the limit in your own.
There's no ceiling
in your own world.
At a job. There is a ceiling. Yep.
Exactly. So, as you mentioned in my bio, I am sort of a serial entrepreneur. I do many projects. I have a radio spot. I was also, I'm an archivist for another artist family, which I just recently ended that project. So I'm solely self-employed now. I schedule when I'm going to work, and I schedule it in the same way that I scheduled working any other job, whether I was a bartender or being an archivist. I look at my calendar and, like, these are the days I'm going to work on Etsy. This is the day I'm firing my kiln. This is the day I'm doing decals. This is the day I'm glazing. And I stick to it, just like I hold myself accountable in the same way that you would hold yourself accountable showing up for any job. And that's, like I said, that's the entrepreneurial secret to success, is to discipline yourself and say, this is a job. This isn't, and you have to decide that too. Do you want this to be your job? And I touch on that in the book too. And the reason that I think that I decided to write about what I do is that Etsy makes it so easy and inexpensive to try this. Like, there's a commitment, but it's your commitment. The financial commitment is nil. Like I said, it's about 20 cents a listing. And actually, through my website, you can get a link to get your first 40 listings for free. So literally, other than buying my book, which is a nominal fee, you can literally enter this almost for free. So you can afford to start an Etsy shop. Like, it's that simple. And then once you do, you just decide, like, here's when I'm going to work it. Maybe it's 2 or 3 hours a week, or 2 hours on the weekend. And the other thing is, you have to make a decision about where you spend your time, because we all have the same amount of time. I have the same amount of time as you do, as do all of your followers. But so maybe you decide, well, I'm not going to be watching TV after dinner every night, or 2 or 3 nights a week. I'm actually going to go to my other job, which is my Etsy job. And I'm going to start building this shop and building this career, building this project to see what I can put out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not about finding time, it's about making time, right? So
that's right.
That's a huge point. We actually have some questions from our audience. So I'm going to read one for you. So this is from Jasbir. He's asking, can Canadians also sell on Etsy? So is it open to other countries?
Absolutely. It's a global marketplace.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And also some other questions here. Or some comments, actually. There's some lagging. Yeah, there is a bit of a lagging. I know there might have when I'm speaking and then her answering. It is a bit slow, but we'll try to manage it. Thanks for pointing it out, though.
Yeah.
Can you sell other people's stuff? Is another question.
Technically, no. To my knowledge, you cannot. It's a peer-to-peer, P2P, peer-to-peer system, and their focus is on artists or craftsmen selling directly to the public.
Okay, right. Okay, that makes sense. And can you also talk about pricing your work? So how do you go about doing that?
It's taken me years to figure out where I fit and how much time and effort I put into what I do. Also combining that with my years of experience and my level of quality for my work. To start out, the first thing I suggest is that you just go on Etsy, just go see what's out there. Let's say you design jewelry. You design a specific kind of jewelry, like you work with semi-precious stones and silver, like that's your thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just start heading into Etsy, and you want to look at two things. You want to see sort of what the market is out there for work that might be similar to yours in size and scope and materials, and then you sort of, but then you look at what you do, and you also want to look at how can you make your work, you only have to be a little bit better than the guy next to you to have a successful Etsy shop. So
what do you
really
mean
just have to try the market.
Like the quality of your work?
I would say the quality, and then absolutely the quality of your work, how you present it, the photography, also your descriptions, like who are you, know who your audience is. Ari, you talk about this a lot in your social media course, which is who's your avatar? Who are you selling to? And it's most important to really understand that you are not selling to everyone. And that's a big mistake that new business owners do. They're like, oh, I just want everyone to like what I do. You actually don't, because you can't. So that's an impossibility. You want to get very, very clear about who your customer is, who is your avatar. The pricing really just kind of, you can play with that. So you start off, maybe in the very beginning, you've never had an Etsy shop. You just start off, at or maybe even a little below what you see comparable work going for. So that you can just kind of get people in the door, because certainly, and then you adjust from there. And then once you start working it, you want to take note of your time. You want to start tracking your materials, tracking your time. Like, how long did it take you to spend, did it take you an hour on a Sunday to like order all your materials, or you went out and bought all your materials? And you just start to gather that information. I recommend always having sort of your business notebook, your entrepreneurial notebook. And especially things like, how long did it take you to pack it and ship it? That's what's called handling, the shipping and handling. Like, people think, oh, that's just whatever. But when I have a lot of orders, it can take me a couple of hours, to put 100 cups in boxes,
Right. Yeah.
And can you do it well.
Can you talk more about that too? Like, so after, when you're selling something, so you make a sale, what does that look like? What do you have to do?
Okay. First, I hear that awesome cha-ching. Love that. Yes. And then the first thing I do, I look at the sale. I use the Etsy app, so I'll get notified of that, anywhere, whether I'm in my studio or I'm out and about. If there's any sort of a question with the sale, because a lot of times people will do custom orders with me because I customize the cups, or they'll just have a question about shipping, or could be anything. The first thing, if a customer is inquiring about anything, I get back to them as soon as possible, because you really, as an entrepreneur, you want to take care of your customer. It's sort of an honor. I always feel like it's an honor, and I'm grateful whenever anyone buys my work. They're going out of their way to do something different and not buy through a corporate entity. Yeah. So at that point, since I have my system down, the first thing I do is I do keep stock. So I check to see if I have what they need in stock. And if I do, I get it out immediately, because a few things make a customer happier than getting something before they thought they were going to get that sort of unexpected, oh, it came so quickly. That's awesome.
Right.
But I'm also very clear that I have a 1 to 2 week turnaround, which you can set up on that. So you can set it up however you want. I mean, maybe you make custom dresses, so it's a 6-week turnaround. You know, it's all you cater this to what you do and how long it takes. Never underestimate the amount of time it'll take to get it to a customer, because few things irritate a customer more than having to wait for an item that they've already paid for. So longer than they think they should.
Yes.
So better to surprise them and get it in early. So that's the first thing I do. And then I'm on a schedule now where basically once a week I'm decaling and firing, you know, and it's really kind of a weekend thing for me now. So from Friday to Monday is usually my Etsy time, you know, not full 8 hours each day, but I know like it's usually a full day of glazing, or so I just have it set up and then I'm on a system. But then in the middle of the week, I'm actually doing other projects, and Etsy is on the side. So I've created that space for me. So I do the firings, the cups come out, I check them all and put them in their sort of respective piles on their order sheets, and then pack them up, get them put into boxes, usually on Sunday nights, because it's easy for me to then go to the post office on Monday mornings and get it out there. And I label right here in my studio in my office. So I just have the system down pat, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point that you touched upon, is a system, right? Having a set schedule where you're going to be doing this in the week, and then you're going to be, you know, creating your stuff, and then setting your listings up, and then taking photographs, all that kind of stuff, and then shipping to the customer. So I'm hearing like the main things for success on Etsy, and feel free to add to this, is really, well, first thing, customer service, right?
Yes.
Always responding to them as quickly as possible. The niche thing, so knowing who your market is. And I feel like you knew exactly who your market is when you're selling those quoted cups, right? Certain people who like Shakespeare are a certain kind of person, right? So you spoke directly to that market, and that's why we can see success in that area too, and not trying to believe that this is for everybody at the same time. So anything else that you would add to that? Those are the two main points that at least stuck out to me.
Absolutely. And when you know, it takes you have to give yourself a break. Like, it can take a little while to sort of figure this out. Like, how would this work if I do, you know, sell my jewelry? So, you know, give yourself time to sort of figure it out. And that's why I say keep a notebook. How long does it take? But you're going to make yourself happier, and you're going to actually be much more efficient if you do sort of put your Etsy time into a certain time. Don't do it all the time. When I first got busy on Etsy, I would be like, oh, I've got an order. I'm going to run to the studio and I'm just going to work on that order. And then the next day I would do the same thing, and it was insane. I didn't really have a life. I was just, you know, between other jobs and Etsy, I was just constantly never ending working. To be able to block time for your different tasks makes everybody's life a lot easier. I think I forgot the second half of your question.
Well, I was kind of touching upon the main points that that makes a successful Etsy seller.
Consistency and quality of your work. Remember, the first time they see your work is in a picture online on their screen, and the second time they see your work is when it arrives at your door. So presentation is everything, and that doesn't mean just the object itself. That means the box too. Like it's okay to use recycled materials to a point. You want to make sure that you know, your box, if you are doing that, you know, sometimes it's more efficient to actually go and purchase the size boxes you need for your products. Have it be pretty on the inside, color tissue paper, put a little note in there that says, oh, here's how to take care of my work. Like in my case, like how to care for the cups, and, oh, please leave me a review. You know, if you're happy with the work, please contact me if anything goes wrong. Contact me immediately if there's any damage. And then I hand sign it, you know, thanks so much, Mandy. So that we have to remember why people go to Etsy too, instead of, let's say, going to Walmart. Like, I want to buy you a gift. I'm going to Etsy because I want something special and unique. Yes. And as your caller wrote in earlier, it's and I mentioned it's a global marketplace. I sell to 8 countries, including the US. And I would never be able to do that if it weren't for the internet. And I have a story in the book about how at Christmas time, I went and I bought some handmade mittens for my niece from this woman in Poland who her about page was like her in her very sort of gray post-World War II kitchen or pre-World War II kitchen, holding a baby on her lap with a big smile. And I thought, I so want to support this woman. This is great. And her product was great, and it made for a really great story too. So success in Etsy is to spend time on Etsy, to make the absolute best product you can, do it as well as you possibly can, make it pretty for the person who's going to receive it. And then, yes, customer service above all else. Because as we all know today, reviews are how people, reviews are what make or break a company or product. Because it doesn't matter how hard you work, if you're not making people happy, they're going to tell their people, et cetera. And then the same is true the other way around. Like, oh, I had a great experience at this Etsy shop. You should go there and check it out. So those are basically the most important things. And then just to continually work it.
That's perfect advice. I love that. And also, I have a question here that came in. It's an interesting question. Do you have to be good at art to sell on Etsy?
Not at all. Marketing, marketing, marketing. You want to make a quality product. I mean, I wrote this book. I wrote this book initially, geared towards fine artists, because that's where I come from. That's my world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when I wrote the book, I beta readers, which helped me sort of edit the book before I went and published it. And one of my beta readers is a professional woman. She works in a corporate capacity. And she said, but she likes to make pillows on the side. Like, she doesn't consider herself artistic or artsy, but she loves to make pillows. And I think they are actually really nice. And so it's really, I mean, you can make, I don't think you need to define yourself as artistic. I think if you have an idea and you want to make it,
just do it.
Etsy's like the perfect platform. And also, and on that note, like this professional woman, she said, actually, she was sort of afraid of judgment from peers, like professional coworkers who just don't live in that world of handmade pillows. So it inspired me to write a little bit about that you can create a shop that has a pen name, so you can have kind of a secret shop or a shop with an anonymous, you don't have to have your picture on there. You can do an about page and have other things on there. So you could actually create products of any kind. Maybe you make keychains and you don't necessarily think that that's artistic, but it's still something you love to do. I mean, I can't think of another item specifically to that. I would say if you have an idea, you think it's cool, and you think, well, I bet somebody else would like this, then Etsy's like the perfect place to just give it a try. You have literally almost nothing to lose by trying.
Yeah, and I feel like, most of the time, if you don't want to define yourself as artistic or creative, it just comes from the fact that you love to do this thing, and other people don't, they're not going to be like, oh, that's a bad piece of art, right? It's just that if they enjoy what you're doing, great, awesome, you're providing value in the marketplace. But and if not, that's not your market. Right? And you don't need to focus on those people.
Exactly. And remember that, you're one person. It's like you're one person out of, I forget, 8 billion people on the planet. I'm not sure. And I wrote the number in my book. I don't know how many. There's millions of members to Etsy. There's just millions of people who shop on Etsy. There's a good chance that somebody else likes what you like. I mean, that's just how we are. And so
there's a good chance.
If you've got something you want to make, just make it. And also, I would say just make it for the experience of making it. Like this is such an easy way, an easy and inexpensive way to try it. Why not? You can just go check it out. And it's also a great way to figure out if you actually, let's say you're like, I think I want to be an entrepreneur, and so I'm going to make my products and I'm going to put them on Etsy. What if you do that, and then you get on Etsy, and then you're working it, and X amount of time goes by. And I do believe it's a long-term commitment. I want to talk about that in a second. But then you figure out, you know what? I don't like this. I just actually would rather go to work and get a paycheck. That's huge. That's a really big deal to just know that. Like that in and of itself is a priceless lesson because you've just figured something out. Like, oh, maybe I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
It's not for everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You don't know unless you try. I mean, as my father told me in college, he said, half of figuring out what you want to do in life is figuring out what you don't want to do. And that's absolutely
huge.
true.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good advice. Mandy, we have a couple questions about your success on Etsy. And if you're willing to share how much you make on Etsy, maybe per week, per month, it's totally up to you.
I'm not comfortable talking about my income on Etsy. I will say that it's a mainstay of my of my business, and I've gotten it to a point where it really works for me because, like I said, I have a system down. So I'm only working at a couple. Oh my gosh, I would say maybe 20 hours in a week, and it's doing really well. But I will say that. And it does fluctuate because that's the nature of entrepreneurship and business. And, I had some less sales in the last couple of months because I was putting so much of my time and energy into getting the book published. So that sort of happens too. And currently I have a studio assistant who works with me when we're doing the physical making and packing of the cups. But everything else I do myself. So my office work and running my other projects, I do myself. But I will say that in 2014, I hand threw. This is before I get my cups, my personal designs cast now. I hand threw over 2,000 cups. So for any of you who know about pottery, that's like throwing the cup on the wheel, like taking a lump of clay and turning it into a cup. And so I literally felt like I almost threw my arms off. So, and that was just my Etsy sales.
That was okay. So that means that's how many sales or orders that you had was 2,000 at once.
Well, that was just the Etsy sales. I also have wholesale accounts locally, and and I used Etsy's a great calling card too, because I started doing the Shakespeare work, and then it's morphed into inspirational quotes, custom quotes, wedding quotes. People will put their the couple's name and the date on the back of a lover's quote kind of cup. I also used it because I had this platform. It's like your own little website, but Etsy is taking care of it for you. That's the other thing. They make it super easy. People can pay with PayPal or credit card, however they want, and you don't have to deal with that. The money just goes into your account, and then once a week or however you want to set it up, Etsy will deposit money into your bank account from the Etsy account. But I used it to garner one of my bigger wholesale accounts, which is with the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is the biggest Shakespeare festival in the United States. And what was great was when I put together sort of an email presentation, and then I emailed them and put a link to my Etsy shop because everything was already there and set up for them. So I was able to garner that wholesale account. And that's only one out of, at initial look, 141 Shakespeare, listed Shakespeare festivals in the United States. So I could ostensibly do so much more, but I don't want to throw my arms off again.
Yeah,
I'm growing at a rate that's comfortable.
I can just imagine fulfilling 2,000 orders at once. That's insanity. How much? How much do you sell each mug for?
The cups that are this size are $24 retail, and then I have a mug. And if I had been prepared, I would have it standing here too. The mugs with handles are $28, and then mugs without handles are $26. Okay, so it's a really affordable gift price. Yeah.
Go ahead. And how does commission work on Etsy? So what is your profit that you make on every mug sale?
Basically, you're making 90 to 93% of the sale because Etsy's only charging you 3.5% for their cut. And then it's about 3.5% for the financial institution that made the sale, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, etc. So you're paying 7%. Which is nothing. As a fine artist, having been in galleries for years and been in shops, and actually, my wholesale accounts are 50%. So a fair amount of wholesale accounts just because either they're local and they're personal, or I just love doing them, like for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. But I make a lot more money selling through Etsy directly to retail customers.
So when you're talking about wholesale, this is off of Etsy? This is something different?
Correct.
Oh,
completely
okay.
right.
Okay, so Etsy is like you're selling retail to customers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But I did want to mention that it's a great kind of calling card and jumping off spot. If you do want to do some wholesale and you have a shop on Etsy, you can say, this is someplace you can send people and say, here's where you can take a look at my stuff. Here's where you can read about me. Here's, if you have any questions.
Yeah. And so if you did want to do wholesale, you can connect with partners who deal with your target market, just as you have with those festivals, and really branch out that way. But yeah, It seems like you need like a whole team for that, especially if you're doing a lot of orders at once. But I think, it's good to hear, that that opportunity exists, but that where you're at right now, like with the resources that you have right now, you're in this place, and that you can eventually get to that place. So I think it's owning where you're at right now, especially even if you don't even have an Etsy store and you just want to, that, okay, I'm at the real starting point, and I need to, my first step is to invest the time into starting one up. So just knowing where you're at and just moving baby steps, shifting, based on the resources that you have. And resources can be money, time, people, right? Other people to help you. We have
that's right. And that's,
yeah, go ahead.
That's just an excellent point about that, is don't overextend yourself. Don't promise more than you can deliver, and don't do that to yourself either, because the last thing you want to do is be like, it's give yourself so much work that you burn yourself out. Like, baby steps. That's brilliant advice, Ari. Like, in any endeavor like this, like, just start out small, take the time, learn how much time it takes to do this. And just, you don't have to give yourself so much pressure. Build it, learn from it, change things. That's the other thing, is that let things morph. I have pictures in my book of like my first cups look nothing like the cups or almost nothing like the cups that I have now. Like, it has really, I've grown as the company. There's an evolution. So you want to sort of give yourself that time. And on that note, Etsy it's not a quick fix. It's a long-term commitment if you're really into this. But the thing is, you can just kind of work it, and see what works. And if it doesn't work, do something different. Try a different angle on what you're trying to sell. Play with your prices up and down. But if you think you're going to get on Etsy, and if you don't see any real, significant sales in 6 months, don't quit. Because you're also one of millions of people selling on Etsy. So you've got to build a following, just like you would on Facebook or anywhere else. You need to get your work out there and like give it time to kind of soak in and let people see it.
Yeah, I believe with anything, right? If you're enjoying what you're doing, just keep going. Don't that's why they say, like, it's about the journey more so than the destination. Because if you're always thinking about the destination, I know here on the channel, we say dare to be dream driven and dream big. And yes, it's important to have that vision. It's not an end goal. That's the important thing. It's like that vision, that thing that you want, that you think about and that you dream about, and that sort of thing. It's important to have that to move you along. But at the same time, if you're going to get frustrated and disappointed that you're not already there, and, you're not enjoying the process, then it's not going to work. That's just
exactly, absolutely. And to be an entrepreneur, it's hard work, but if you're doing something you love, then it turns out not to be work. If to love what you do and make a living at it, making some kind of living at it, even if you're not making a great living at it, to just, we're here to create. I believe that as humans, we are here to create. And if you've got that in you, if you've got that drive, that gift, that little voice, honor that muse, go for it, and just have fun with it, and take the pressure off of, oh, I have to make this much money, or I'm not doing it right. You're doing it right just by doing it.
Yeah.
So, and loving it.
We have a comment from Yeti Happy. She says, I believe that when you put yourself out there, That is when you'll shine. Don't worry about what others think. Absolutely. That's
Excellent
exactly
point.
right.
I agree.
And Sergey is asking, what is your Etsy store?
The Quoted Cup.
The Quoted Cup. So you can go on Etsy
And when you go,
easily search for that?
yes, and actually, this is a funny part. There's very few things that I critique on Etsy because I think they handle things really beautifully and make things really easy. But you have to write that as one word. So the Quoted Cup, no spaces. Their search engine is the only thing that it's gotten better in the last couple of years, but it's still a little wonky. So write the Quoted Cup as one word, and you'll find me.
Great. And I'll, I don't think that link is in the description below, but I'll add to it so you guys can check it out later.
Okay.
And also another question is from Yeti. Is there a limitation on Etsy as to how many artists can sell a certain type of item? For example, a limitation of only having 50 artists selling quilts, for example? It's a really good question.
Not at all. It's infinite. It's infinite, which is great. And then also can be daunting because there might be just a lot of people doing the same thing, but that's not the point. The point is you do what you do best and then just do your best at it. So no, there's no limit.
So do you ever have people come to you talking about, like concerned about the competition that they have on Etsy?
I know a couple of other local people who are Etsy sellers. In fact, one of my former studio assistants, is an Etsy seller, and she makes royal icing. She's someone who does the food stuff, if you will. And she's, she has had struggles with competition because I guess people will kind of underbid her. Sometimes they'll copy her designs. Like she'll figure out how to make a really cool looking ladybug, and so she makes these. It's called Cupcakes by Christie. Or is it Cake Art by Christie? So she'll come up with a new design, and then she will find that like her design will be doing really well. Like she's making, let's say, ladybugs or something that goes on top, and she'll see someone else kind of swooping in and copying her design. But there's two things that set her apart. One is her attention to detail, like the way she makes them. They're beautiful. They're like these little sculptures you can eat. But then also her attention to detail with her packaging and her customer service. And she's been an Etsy seller for so many years. So that's how she stays relevant in the market. Because we can't, in this day and age, people are always going to try and steal your stuff. I mean, that's just part of the business. And
they do.
Yeah, right? Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know what you have to realize?
Go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
Well, I was going to say is that one, you let go of things being too precious, and just, and two, like if they're stealing your stuff, it's kind of this, it's a form of flattery. It's not a very great one, but it's a form of flattery. But two, go on and make something else. Make something new. Don't rest on your laurels on one thing or one product. Like just keep getting better. Nobody can copy you.
Yeah.
You're still going to be unique.
You said exactly what I was going to say. Just, people will copy you. And, don't worry about that. Like, don't focus on it. Don't let that stop you from continuing to create and put yourself out there, because you are putting yourself, your personality, your background, everything into this thing that you're creating for other people, and that is going to shine on its own. And you can do these little things like you were saying on your listing, maybe touch upon how long you've been an Etsy seller for, or what makes you unique, so that people will be more aware of that.
Exactly. And on that note, customer reviews too. Like when you go to anybody's Etsy site, just like anywhere, like Amazon, anything, we are now accustomed to, before we buy a product we've never bought before, we tend to, don't we all just go look at customer reviews, And so Etsy does the same sort of thing that Amazon does. And so you can go to someone's site and just see like the hundreds of 4 or 5 star reviews and what people are writing about that person. Like, it shipped quickly. It was beautiful quality. It was, the seller was really easy to work with, that kind of thing. And that's how you create an edge as well. And on that note, you want to push your reviews. You want to when you, whatever you're selling, put a little note in the box that says, please, if you're happy, or please, if you like your product, please leave me a review, because it helps me build my business. And people are getting more and more accustomed to just doing that anyway.
And you can learn a lot from just looking up
Yes.
reviews of other people, right? If you're searching for an item that is something similar to what you're doing, you can go and read the reviews of that particular seller and see what that audience really appreciates, what they like, what they don't like, and make sure you're incorporating those things into your own store. Is that right?
Exactly. And that's a great way too to learn about your own work. Is if you're getting reviews and someone, I mean, this happened to me with, as I said, like putting a note about how to care for the cups. I had a customer leave me a review that says, well, I would have done 5 stars, but she didn't put any kind of care instructions. It had never occurred to me to do that. So I was extremely thankful for that 4-star review from the customer, because now I do that all the time. Like, oh, that's something people want. I didn't realize that. So you also want to read all your reviews. Yeah, exactly. So learn from your customers and see what they want and what they like and what they don't like,
Yeah, absolutely. Sergey is asking how much profit you make per item. So I think we touched upon that, Sergey. So you're making 93%. Etsy takes about 7%. So for a mug, can you just give us an example? I don't want to do the math. Maybe you'll know the profit on a mug.
You're going to make me pull out my calculator. So if my mug is 20,
so a $26 mug, maybe.
Well, let's just say, okay, so we'll go the middle of the road, the 26. Oh, and then there's shipping too. I want to talk about shipping. Times 93. Where's the percent sign? Okay, I'm not seeing it. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm having a problem with my calculator. So to 20, let's say a $26 mug, I mean, 260 would be 10%. So 26 minus 2, that's 24. I make on a $26 mug. Now this isn't profit. This is just this. Etsy is only taking 7% altogether. They're taking 3.5% for their cut and 3.5% to the merchant cut for PayPal, Visa, MasterCard. Profit is a whole different thing. I still have to buy raw materials. I put in a lot of labor and also I have equipment costs. I mean, I have a very big kiln, that I use, and there's the cost of electricity to fire it. And I have a studio assistant who helps me with packing and shipping and helps me do the decaling. And so there are a lot of costs because it's a business. I mean, I get raw materials and I turn them into the cups and spend a lot, I figure out my labor and my time. And that is something you have to kind of figure out. And I would say that anyone's first year of business, it can be a little, you have to look at it, it's startup costs are called startup costs for a reason. And part of it is you're figuring out how much does it cost for me to do this? Because it's not just, taking clay, which I pay this much for, and then, turning it into this. There's a lot of processes that are in between these two things. And over the years, I have really figured it out. And part of the way I figured it out is I take notes. Like I literally okay, if I bought this much clay, I know that from a 25-pound bag of clay, I break it down to I can get 22 wine cups out of that. And so I divide the cost of that clay, and then how long did it take me to throw those 22 wine cups? And so what am I making an hour? And the other thing about that is when you're deciding how much you want to make an hour, there's a different cost for me, like using my professional skills, let's say throwing on the potter's wheel, or even my glazing. I have really good glazing skills, and I also have a custom glaze that I made. That's a different hourly wage than my shipping and what I would charge someone for my shipping and handling. That's a little more basic. So that might be less an hour. Now this might all sound like, whoa, that's a whole lot of numbers to move around. But you do this for a certain amount of time, whatever works for you. And you just sort of figure out, well, here's how much I spent this month. And here's the hours, the amount of time I put into it. You track it. And then here's how much product I got. Here's how many cups that I got out of, 80 some hours and this amount of hundreds of dollars worth of raw materials. And this is how much I paid my studio assistant. and you figure it out. And it takes a little while, but then once you have it down, then you can kind of adjust it, and then it's fun. And then when you do really well, you don't have to, like, this cup is more expensive than cups you see on Etsy that are decaled, that have quotes on them, that I can tell are, let's say, come from China, you know, a typical white coffee mug with something written across the front of it, because this takes a lot more labor to hand make this than they are just
making it from scratch.
Right, exactly. And so I realized that, like, my niche market, my avatar, isn't the person who would actually buy the other kind of cup. You know, that's not my market. Like, the person who would go into Walmart and buy the standard coffee cup, coffee mug. That's not my market. Mine's somewhere else. Somebody who's willing to pay a little bit more for something a little more, that's more unique.
Right. Yeah.
I think I went off tangent there.
No, that's all good. That's all good. We're gonna take one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up. It's the end of the hour here.
Okay.
So Sergey is asking, how do you get reviews on Etsy? How do you prompt your customers to leave that review?
You ask them. Often, I would say in the beginning too, one thing, like I said, I always put a little note in the box and I'll highlight it. Oh, I would love it if you could leave me a review, and I'll highlight, here's how you do it. Go to your purchases. I think it says your reviews. There's an actual, you know, steps. I'll highlight. That's the other thing. You want to make things really, really easy for people. No matter, like, whenever you're asking someone to do something, make it as easy as possible. Like, explain it like you're talking to a 6-year-old. So, you know, write it all out, you know, go to this link, go here, go here. But the other thing is, in the beginning too, I don't really need to do this so much now, but you can actually contact your customer post sale and say, hey, how did you like the quoted cup I sent you? You know, do you have any suggestions for me? Is there, you know, and you asked me, I said, if you have the time, I would really love it if you could leave me a review, because it helps me build my business. And that's the other thing, is to just be honest with people. Like, this really helps me. Like, they went and bought something from you because they wanted something unique and from somebody personal, and to support an artist. So they'll usually
that's a sign that they want to support you. So it's a good
exactly. You're halfway there
that they'll give you the review if you just ask and tell them that it does help your business. Yeah,
exactly.
That's great. Awesome.
Exactly.
Well,
but don't pester them. Like, if you've done that, like, don't keep asking people, because you don't want to upset people. They either will or they won't.
That's the other thing. Don't be like too bombarding with them. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. This has all been awesome information. Thank you so much, Mandy. Yeah. There was something that you wanted to offer for our viewers for free?
That's right. Yes. So this is the book, From Artistic to Entrepreneur. And you can actually find this on Amazon. You can also find it on my Etsy shop site. But if you're outside of the US, it's just better to buy it on Amazon because of Prime shipping. What I'd like to do is offer a free signed copy of my new book it'll be a random person who goes to my resource page and signs up to get free resources. So anybody that signs up today, I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick a random name, and I will send you a personalized signed copy of my book.
That's so nice of you. That's awesome. So again, guys, if you're interested in getting a free signed copy of that book, which is absolutely awesome, go to FromArtisticToEntrepreneur.com and sign up for her free resources. You're going to do the draw on the 11th?
I will do it. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm actually heading out of town tonight. So what I'll do it by the end of this week, and you'll get an email, and Ari, you can announce to your fans, like, this is who won, and, you know, so that everybody knows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also included, you can do that. You can enter in the draw. It's also, if you want to purchase it directly, I've included the Amazon link down in the description below. All right.
Oh, great.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mandy, once again, for sharing your time with us. And thank you to everyone who's watching. Again, if you have any questions, last minute questions or anything like that, still leave them in the comments below, and I'll send them off to Mandy so we can get those answered for you.
All right.
Guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ari. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. You're very welcome. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
All right.